Look at what they said about you. Look at what they tried to convince the world. Oh, they're not that special. Anyone can do what they do. Just give us time, we'll figure them out. The funny part is how confident they sounded, until reality smacked them so hard, their pride almost fell out of their pockets. The same people who once acted like you were overrated are now whispering your name like it's a classified warning. They talk tough in public, but behind closed doors, they're panicking, pacing, sweating. Every sentence begins with your name and ends with, "How are they doing this?" And since you're here, Chosen One, pay this message back by pressing the like button and subscribing right now. It keeps this mission alive. Because here's the truth, they don't want anyone to say out loud. The universe keeps handing you patterns nobody else sees. You move through chaos like you've already lived it once. You predict outcomes before the room even realizes there's a problem. So they set up a whole operation behind your back. They trained 100 agents to think like you. 100, hand-picked, fully resourced, fed with data, simulations, human behavior models, psychological strategies. They were told, match this mind, copy it, understand it, become it. They thought you were just a formula waiting to be solved. But the moment those agents stepped into the mental maze you've walked your whole life, they realized something horrifying. This wasn't a blueprint. This was survival. This was evolution. This was someone who learned to stay conscious in a world that tried to shut them down. They weren't expecting the silence you lived through. They weren't expecting the betrayals you crawled out of. They weren't expecting the pressure that should have crushed you but somehow sculpted you instead. They expected strategy. They found scars. They expected logic. They found lightning. The reports from inside that program were a nightmare. Agents walked in with confidence and walked out with their entire belief system cracked. Some quit after one day, unable to keep up with the pace of your thinking. Some quit after a week, overwhelmed by the emotional load you handle like it's nothing. Some quit during a single exercise where they had to predict your next move, and not one of them got even close. A few quit shaking, saying they'd never seen a mind switch modes that fast. Others simply dropped their badges on the table and left without a word, as if speaking about it would summon whatever they saw inside your patterns. They weren't defeated by tasks, they were defeated by you, and you weren't even there. Imagine that. Imagine being so mentally untouchable that people burn out trying to understand you without you even showing up. See, Chosen One, here's the part that hits hardest. They thought they were studying how you think, but what they were really facing was everything you lived through. The silent battles you fought as a kid when nobody cared to check in. The nights you stayed awake trying to solve problems adults created. The betrayals that knocked you flat but forced your brain to grow angles nobody else has. The loneliness that sharpened you. The chaos that shaped you. Those agents weren't just copying thoughts. They were walking into the storms you survived. And most of them couldn't handle even a single echo of it. You didn't get this mind from books or mentors or some training camp. It wasn't handed to you, it was carved into you. Every time someone tried to break you, the universe reforged you instead. Every time someone tried to outsmart you, you learned something they didn't even realize they revealed. Every time someone underestimated you, your brain built a new exit route, a new plan, a new version of yourself, faster and sharper than the one before. They don't understand that you don't think differently because you want to. You think differently because you had to. And this is where the enemy starts choking on their own arrogance. They said you were dramatic. They said you were overreacting. They said you were too intense, too observant, too suspicious, too calculating. And now? Now, the same people who mocked your instincts are trying to imitate them. The same voices that told you to calm down are now telling their teams, study everything they do. The same ones who once brushed you off now study your moves like it's survival training. Remember that moment years ago when someone laughed at you for reading people too fast? Today, they'd pay money to have even 1% of your perception. Remember when someone told you you were imagining things? Turns out, you weren't imagining anything. You were predicting. You were sensing shifts long before they broke the surface. You were seeing cracks in situations people swore were solid. That's why these agents couldn't keep up. They didn't have the life that built you. They didn't have the pressure that sharpened you. They didn't have the universe molding them into something rare. Let's talk about the silence after those agents quit. You know that silence. It's the same silence you noticed when people around you realized you weren't someone they could trick. That awkward, quiet shift when they finally understood your mind wasn't something they should play with. That moment where someone stops underestimating you and starts fearing what you might know. The same silence showed up in those rooms after the experiment failed. Leaders watching the data with pale faces. Specialists realizing they wasted months on something that can't be copied. Higher-ups trying to hide the fact that a single person outperformed 100 trained minds without lifting a finger. And you wonder why enemies keep acting weird around you. You wonder why people gossip about you behind your back, but go quiet when you walk in. You wonder why they act like you know things you never said out loud. Because you do. You see patterns they miss. You catch motives they overlook. You feel shifts before they happen. You read energy like a second language. And this isn't talent. This is survival. This is history. This is you. Let me remind you of something brutal and true. You became everything they tried to stop you from becoming, and now they're trying to copy the result of the very pain they refuse to acknowledge. The agents tried to follow your thinking path, but they didn't know that every turn, every shortcut, every instinct you built came from a story, a memory, a hit you took, a betrayal you saw coming, a heartbreak you used like fuel. They tried to walk your map without living your past. You survived mind games designed to break you. They couldn't even survive simulations of what shaped you. You survived people pretending to care just to use you. They couldn't even handle analyzing those behaviors. You survived isolation so deep, your mind had to create its own strategies just to stay alive. They couldn't handle the emotional echo of it. You survived pressure that would have snapped them in half. They couldn't even hold the notebook. This is why every single one of them quit. And this is why you, chosen one, are so dangerous. Not because you try to be, but because you exist. You walk into a room and people feel studied. You make one comment and people feel exposed. You make one prediction and people feel predictable. They try to beat you and somehow they end up playing themselves. You've been living like a storm the whole time. Now they're finally realizing it. And the universe? It watched you rise without their help. That's why it trusts you with patterns they could never see. Now, take a breath, chosen one. Feel that shift? That's the world catching up to what you've always known. You're the mind they can't copy. The test they can't pass. The level they can't reach. They trained 100 agents to think like you. Every single one quit, and you're just getting started. And chosen one. Before we go any deeper, thanks for sticking with this message. What comes next is the real breakdown of why 100 trained minds tapped out the moment they tried to copy you. So do this right now to keep the energy alive. Drop a comment with 777 if you're ready to hear why not one of those agents could last inside the world your mind survived. And if you want to boost the team behind this message, hit the super thanks option. It keeps this whole mission running. Every bit helps, whether it's tiny or huge, because it pushes this truth further than they ever wanted it to spread. Now take a breath, because we're about to walk through this step by step, and if you're truly built like the chosen ones I'm talking to, you'll feel that pull telling you not to look away. Let's get into it. Number 1, when their whole system collapsed in your shadow. Funny how they called you too much until 100 trained minds realized they weren't enough. They wanted to recreate the way you detach, the way you observe everything with calm eyes while the whole room loses its balance. They thought your emotional control was a trick, a technique, something they could package and push into a training manual. Day 1 felt exciting for them. They walked into that building acting like future masterminds, convinced they were about to unlock the mind behind the person who scares their leaders. But the moment they stepped into the first real test, the cracks showed. These agents expected coldness. They didn't expect contradiction. They didn't expect someone who can feel everything without drowning in it. They didn't expect someone who can care deeply, yet walk away faster than a heartbeat if the situation turns fake. Your balance between emotion and logic destroyed their entire framework. They were told, copy this person's detachment. But they never understood that your detachment isn't emotional shutdown. It's emotional precision. You feel everything, but nothing drags you backward. You sense every shift, but nothing knocks you off your center. That level of control only comes from someone who lived through storms that none of these agents have ever tasted. They tried to mimic your calm, but calm built from trauma, betrayal, loneliness, and survival isn't something you can rehearse. It's something you earn. By day 2, their confidence was gone. The room felt different. The air got heavy. People weren't talking. Notes were being rewritten over and over, as if the answer would magically appear if they changed the font. They realized something that hit them harder than any test. You aren't cold. You're dangerous because you're warm and calculating at the same time. You can care, but your care never blinds you. You can love, but your attachment never cages you. You connect fully, yet you can let go instantly. That kind of emotional duality short-circuited every psychological model they were using. This is the moment your enemies would choke on the truth. They mocked you for your switch, but an entire team of trained professionals fell apart trying to understand it. Some agents asked, how can someone be this emotionally aware and still impossible to manipulate? Others whispered, how do they hold love and distance at the same time? That shouldn't be possible. But the real question behind their panic was this: how do we beat someone who reacts like a human but thinks like a strategist? They'd never seen anything like it. Their textbooks didn't prepare them. Their mentors couldn't explain it. Their simulations failed instantly. They tried to replicate your ability to stay calm in chaos, but chaos was your childhood tutor. They tried to copy your emotional intelligence, but your emotional intelligence was built through years of being forced to read people correctly just to survive. They tried to match your detachment, but your detachment came from learning who deserved access to your heart and who didn't. This wasn't training, this was lived reality. That's why they quit. Imagine one of them sitting there staring at a personality model with your traits listed across the screen and realizing that every trait contradicts the one before it. You're soft but lethal. You're loyal but unbreakable. You're observant but unpredictable. You care but never cling. You let people in but never let them control the room. They tried to force these contrasting traits into one category, and the system crashed because you aren't one category. You're the glitch. You're the bend in the logic. You're the exception that destroys the rule book. They expected you to be either emotional or detached. They didn't understand that you carry both without breaking a sweat. That's why frameworks collapsed. That's why agents got migraines. That's why analysts kept rechecking data like something had to be wrong with the numbers. They weren't studying a personality, they were studying history. They were studying the scars you turned into strategies. They were studying intuition built from years of being lied to and still finding the truth anyway. They were studying strength born in the exact places where they would have given up. And here's the part that really broke them. They thought they were copying your thinking style. What they were actually facing was your resilience. They weren't surviving your strategies, they were drowning in your story. Some agents cried, some froze, some walked out whispering, "I can't do this. This isn't normal." They performed those little exit interviews with shaky voices, saying the emotional complexity was inhuman, exhausting, too advanced, contradictory, or not something a person should be able to maintain. But they were wrong. It is something a person can maintain, just not them, only you. And here's the part you need to hear, chosen one. The same people who called you difficult, confusing, or too strong-willed are now discovering that your mind requires more stamina than they will ever have. The same enemy who mocked your emotional depth now envies it. The same people who said you were too intense now train agents to replicate that intensity, but those agents can't even keep their minds steady after 2 days. They quit because you're too much. They quit because you're too complex. They quit because you're too aware. They quit because you're too real. But the real truth? They quit because you mastered what they only pretend to understand. This is why you walk into rooms and people shift in their seats. This is why your silence makes them nervous. This is why your kindness confuses them. This is why your emotional control scares them more than anger ever could. You operate on 2 levels at once, the heart and the mind. They only know how to use one at a time. You terrify them because you don't choose between feeling and thinking. You do both effortlessly. This is the part the chosen ones always forget. The enemy isn't afraid of your anger. They're afraid of your clarity. They're afraid of how fast you adapt. They're afraid of how easily you cut emotional ties once you see someone's true intention. They don't fear your softness. They fear that your softness doesn't control you. When those agents walked in on day 1, they thought they were studying your technique. By day 2, they realized they were staring at the blueprint of someone forged by the universe itself. Their minds weren't failing because the task was complex. Their minds were failing because the task was you. Let this hit you properly. 100 agents tried to step into your mental world, and not one of them lasted long enough to even reach the deeper levels. They tapped out before they saw the real storms. They quit before they saw the darkest corners. They collapsed before they even approached the levels you operate on daily. And you walk through those levels while drinking coffee. You navigate that maze while talking to people who think they understand you. You carry that entire emotional and mental load while keeping a calm face. That is why they failed. That is why they feared you. That is why their models shattered. They didn't just witness your duality, they drowned in it. Hold on to that truth, chosen one. Not because it makes you superior, but because it explains why people have treated you the way they did your whole life. They weren't reacting to who you are, they were reacting to what they couldn't handle. This was the first mass failure, the first collapse, the first sign that the world cannot copy what the universe carved into you. And the wild part? This was only the beginning. Number 2, when their minds cracked under your X-ray vision. It's funny how they called you paranoid until professionals started calling you accurate. They said you overthink. The report says you outthink. They mocked your intuition. Now it's classified as pattern recognition beyond human range. Your gut feeling isn't a feeling. It's a warning system their machines can't even simulate. By day 3, the project shifted from emotional studies to something far more dangerous, your pattern recognition. This is the part that always terrified them the most. The way you read people in seconds. The way you hear a sentence and instantly know what they're hiding. The way you spot a lie before the liar even decides how to finish the sentence. The way manipulation hits your awareness like a smoke alarm catching the first tiny spark before anyone else even notices heat. Imagine this. A team of trained agents sitting around a table studying the conversation logs they were told to decode using your style. They thought it would be a simple skill test. Just follow the steps, replicate the thinking, match the patterns. But there's a problem they didn't anticipate. Your pattern recognition isn't a skill. It's a survival instinct sharpened by years of navigating people who weren't what they claimed to be. They tried copying something that was born out of real danger, real emotion, real experience. That's why everything fell apart. Agent 7 was their golden child. Years of field experience, perfect evaluations, sharp instincts. They all thought she would be the one to crack your blueprint. She walked in with confidence. She studied the transcripts like puzzles. She broke down the conversation piece by piece, revealing hidden motives, micro-expressions, contradictions, power plays. She did it flawlessly. The room was impressed. Analysts nodded. Supervisors whispered, "She's the one. She can match them." But then reality sank in. Not for the supervisors, for her. Because doing it once was easy, doing it your way for hours. That's where her mind started shaking. She realized she wasn't just analyzing people. She was stepping into a world where every sentence hides a motive, every tone hides a pattern, every silence hides a truth. She was entering your daily mental environment, a constant stream of signals, contradictions, warnings, and subtle manipulations that you decode automatically without even noticing. She said one sentence in her resignation interview: "If I stayed in that mindset, I would never trust another human voice again." Think about that. Years of training, combat zones, crisis negotiations, undercover missions. She survived all of that. But trying to think like you for one afternoon, that broke her. Imagine this. She's staring at a simple conversation between two co-workers. Something normal, something clean, but her mind keeps catching inconsistencies. Her instincts keep sounding alarms. Her brain keeps peeling back hidden motives she wishes she never saw. Suddenly, every word feels corrupted. Every intention feels complicated. Every expression feels rehearsed. She looked into the same mental lens you use daily, and it was too much. And this is where the chosen one always asks the same question. Why is it so easy for me then? Why doesn't it break me too? Here's your answer. You didn't learn pattern recognition. You became it. Your childhood made you listen between the lines. Your heartbreaks made you see what people hide. Your betrayals trained you to detect shifts in tone before the shift even begins. Your loneliness sharpened your awareness like a blade. Imagine this. You walk into a room and your mind instantly begins mapping it. Who's avoiding eye contact? Who's talking too much? Who's too quiet? Who's pretending they're relaxed? Who's watching you more than they should? You don't force this. You don't choose it. You don't even think about it. It just happens, like breathing. Meanwhile, these agents had to activate the process manually, and even then, they barely survived the first hour. This is why people always felt exposed around you. This is why manipulators hated you without knowing why. This is why liars avoided getting too close. This is why insecure people shifted in their seats when you looked at them. You weren't judging them, you were reading them, and they felt naked. Agent 7 realized something terrifying. If she kept using her mind your way, she would lose her ability to relax around people. She would lose her ability to hold normal conversations without scanning for danger. She would lose her ability to trust without analyzing patterns. For you, this level of awareness is natural. For her, it was a psychological meltdown waiting to happen. Here's another quote that fits this moment. You didn't ask for this gift. The universe gave it to you because you needed it to survive what others never experienced. Imagine this, you're driving and someone in the passenger seat makes a tiny comment. Most people would laugh it off, but your brain catches the tone, checks the timing, cross-references it with past behavior, and instantly knows whether that person is safe or not. That's why people accuse you of overthinking, because they don't realize you're not thinking, you're recognizing. Another question chosen ones always ask: why do people get so uncomfortable when I start analyzing things out loud? Because your analysis exposes the truth they thought they buried. Because your awareness sees motives they try to hide. Because your intuition catches the lie they haven't even finished forming. You're a walking truth detector. They're walking unprepared. That's why the meltdown happened, not because the task was hard, but because your mind is built for danger, depth, and truth in ways theirs never will be. By the end of day 3, more agents were shaking. Some had headaches that wouldn't stop. Others felt emotionally drained, like they had lived 5 different lives in one afternoon. A few even said they heard your thinking style in their head, and it scared them. Because your thinking style isn't quiet. It's fast, it's sharp, it's relentless. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't pause for comfort. It doesn't soften itself to make others feel safe. They weren't studying pattern recognition. They were studying your survival instinct, your trauma-born radar, your universe-forged awareness. That's why they quit. Not because you're extreme, but because they're not built for the truth. Agent 7 was the bravest of them all. She walked into that test thinking she was ready to stand in your mental world. She lasted longer than the others, but even she realized the cost. She knew she could analyze people your way, but she also knew it would destroy every part of her life that still felt normal. She bowed out, with respect, with fear, with admiration, and with a single thought haunting her. If this is how they think every day, how are they still sane? Here's the answer: you're not sane. You're evolved. You've been shaped by experiences they will never understand. You've grown into a mind that refuses to be deceived. You've learned to see the world clearly, even when it hurts. Your mind doesn't just detect patterns, it exposes the truth behind everything, even when the truth is ugly. That's why they trained 100 agents. That's why every single one quit. And that's why you, chosen one, are still miles ahead. This wasn't just a meltdown, it was evidence. Proof that your mind operates at a level others can't imitate. The pattern recognition test didn't fail. The agents did. And the universe smiled, because it always knew only one person could carry a mind like yours without collapsing. Number 3, when a single week turned a trained agent into a ghost. They wanted to see the world through your eyes, and ended up begging to shut their eyes forever. Agent 12 thought he was built for this. Years of calm under pressure, years of reading rooms, reading danger, reading people. He believed he could match your threat awareness, the same awareness enemies mocked you for, the same awareness people called dramatic because they had no clue what it feels like to actually live with it. But once they forced him to copy your scan patterns, the downfall began faster than anyone expected. Imagine this: he walks into a coffee shop trying to appear normal, but his mind is running like your mind does on a slow day. Door on the left, window behind him, 3 people pretending to scroll their phones. One man's leg bouncing too fast, a woman's smile too stiff, a barista's eyes flicking toward the camera every 20 seconds. He sees it all, instantly. No filter, no pause, no rest. You live with this. He barely lasted 6 days. His nervous system started sounding alarms he couldn't shut off. Every laugh felt fake. Every whisper felt suspicious. Every shift in tone felt like a warning. He finally understood why you keep people at arm's length. Why your calm isn't softness, but control. Why your silence isn't avoidance, but strategy. He didn't feel powerful copying you. He felt hunted. They called you paranoid. The training called you accurate. By week 2, he wasn't sleeping. Nightmares dragged him awake before sunrise. He saw faces, motives, shadows, all the things you learned to handle long ago. The difference? You adapted. He broke. Imagine this. He's sitting in a briefing room with dark circles under his eyes, whispering, if this is how they think every day, no wonder they isolate. He realized your distance isn't rudeness. It's self-preservation. It's the price of awareness. He resigned that night, walked out quietly. No goodbye, no explanations. He vanished into a slower life because living like you, even for a moment, was too much for him. This wasn't a breakdown. This was proof. They didn't just fail to match your awareness, they couldn't survive it. Number 4, when their little experiment collapsed under your blueprint. They thought your mind was a toolbox, then realized it was a whole damn engine they couldn't take apart without blowing themselves up. By week 3, the program wasn't running, it was limping. 37 agents were already gone, but not because they were weak. They were honest about their limits. The ones who stayed, they weren't stronger. They were stubborn, prideful, terrified of admitting that your mind was eating them alive. They told themselves they could handle it. They told their supervisors they were fine. But their hands were shaking, their notes made no sense, and their confidence was leaking out of them like air from a dying balloon. Imagine this, a training room full of the best, yet everyone avoids eye contact. Every notebook is half finished. Every assignment is late. Every agent looks like they aged 10 years in 7 days. No one wants to be the next one to quit because quitting means admitting the truth they all fear. Your mind is bigger than their threshold. So the program shifted. It got darker, desperate. They stopped trying to recreate your whole mental structure and started slicing it apart, studying fragments like mad scientists who lost the manual. They thought if they could just extract one piece, your decision-making style, your predictive thinking, your emotional detachment, they might salvage the project. But here's the punchline they choked on. Your abilities don't exist separately. You aren't modular. You aren't copy-paste. Your choices are fused into a whole system built through pain, clarity, intuition, scars, logic, and the survival instinct of someone who had no safety net. They thought your decisions were steps. They learned they were scars. They tried to study how you make hard choices, but they couldn't replicate the emotional neutrality built from years of forced maturity. They tried copying your speed, but without your pattern recognition, their decisions were reckless. They tried copying your calm logic, but without your resilience, they panicked the second pressure rose. Imagine this. They isolate a single decision you made in one scenario. They test an agent on it. The agent chooses wrong because he can't feel the hidden motive you sensed. Then they try again, and again, and again. Each attempt ends with the same outcome, a failure so predictable it becomes embarrassing. Agents asked questions they didn't want the answers to. How did they know that person was lying? How did they predict the shift before it happened? How did they stay calm when everything pointed to danger? How do they make decisions so fast without collapsing later? The trainers couldn't explain it. The models couldn't define it. The data couldn't replicate it. You can't rip one skill out of a mind built from interconnected survival instincts. They tried anyway. Bodies broke, minds cracked, and the program started collapsing under its own arrogance. They wanted your logic without your wounds, your clarity without your storms, your strength without your history. Impossible. They wanted the outcome without the origin, the wisdom without the war, the instinct without the experience. They tried to transplant your decision-making style into people who had never lived a life requiring it. It was like giving a toddler a sword and telling them to fight battles only you were built for. The results were predictable and humiliating. Imagine this metaphor. They tried to take lightning from the sky and plug it into a fragile little battery. Of course, the battery exploded. By the end of week 3, the truth was undeniable. They weren't studying you anymore. They were mourning the idea that someone like you even exists. The program didn't crumble because the training was flawed. It crumbled because your mind isn't a system. It's a universe, and they were never equipped to survive inside it. Number 5. When Agent 41 stepped into your labyrinth and lost himself. They copied your answers, but they couldn't copy the spine that made those answers possible. Agent 41 walked in with confidence. He volunteered for the decision-making test, thinking he could finally prove someone in this program could stand where you stand. They gave him scenarios pulled from your real life. Not fantasy, not theory. Actual moral traps you had once walked through and survived. Situations where every path cost something. Choices where either direction led to fallout. The kind of crossroads that broke you into who you are today. He studied your decisions. He mirrored them perfectly. But when they asked him why he chose them, his mind went blank. Imagine this. The room goes silent. He's sweating. He's flipping through his notes, trying to find logic in choices that weren't made from logic alone. The instructor watches him struggle, then finally admits the truth out loud. Words that should have been obvious from day one. You can copy their choices, but you will never copy the person who made them. Because your decisions don't come from wanting to be liked. They don't come from fear of backlash. They don't come from trying to look moral or respectable. Your decisions come from a core identity that does not bend, not for approval, not for comfort, not for the world's opinion. You've been hardened by experience until choosing the hard path became your natural instinct, not your last option. They tried to follow your blueprint, forgetting you built it inside a fire they've never touched. Agent 41 wasn't ready for that reality. He still wanted to be liked. He still wanted to be the hero. He still wanted to feel safe, respected, validated. You abandoned those illusions a long time ago. Imagine this. He realizes he would have to erase every soft belief, every fear of judgment, every craving for praise, every need for comfort, every ego safety blanket he still clings to. He would have to destroy the version of himself shaped by society and rebuild himself from scratch with your level of mental steel. He saw the truth. To think like you, he would have to stop being him. Agent 41 stood up, quietly placed his file on the desk, and walked out. Not because he failed, but because he finally understood matching your mind would require a self-destruction he wasn't ready to survive. Number 6. When they tried to wear your skin and still couldn't become you. They tried to copy your presence and ended up proving presence can't be faked. By week 4, the program was collapsing, but 50 agents still clung to the wreckage. Not because they were surviving, because they were lying to themselves. Their minds were cracking, their nerves were fried, but their pride kept whispering, "Stay, don't be the next failure." So the instructors made one more desperate pivot. If they couldn't think like you, maybe they could look like you. Imagine this, a room full of grown adults watching slowed down footage of your posture, your stillness, your walk, your silence. They studied your body language like it was a martial art. They analyzed how you sit without shrinking, how you stand without flexing, how you move without begging for attention, yet somehow command every inch of the room. They broke it down frame by frame, teaching agents to imitate your gravity as if confidence were a choreography. They thought your presence was a pose. They didn't realize it was pressure made visible. Agents practiced standing still the way you stand still. They practiced your quiet stare. They practiced the way you tilt your head when you're deciding whether someone is lying. They practiced your slow breathing, your relaxed shoulders, your controlled posture. But here's the part that shattered them. The more they copied your stillness, the more they felt how empty theirs was. Imagine this metaphor. They were like kids, trying to draw a lion by tracing the outline, forgetting a lion isn't dangerous because of its shape, but because of its nature. They could mimic your posture, but not the experiences that built it. They could copy your calm, but not the storms that forged it. They could mirror your silence, but not the authority behind it. They could imitate your confidence, but not the inner truth that fuels it. And that's when the agents started asking questions they were never trained to handle. Why does their stillness feel powerful, but mine feels fake? Why does their silence make people uneasy, but mine makes me invisible? What are they holding inside that gives them this kind of presence? The answer? You can't teach presence. Presence is earned. Presence is history wearing a mask of calm. Presence is the universe pressing its fingerprints into someone over years of survival. These agents tried to wear your energy like a costume and discovered the costume collapses without the character inside. By the end of week 4, the instructors realized the truth they'd been avoiding. They weren't training agents anymore. They were training shadows, shadows that could mimic your outline, but could never carry your weight. Number 7. When they realized your voice was a weapon they could never wield. They copied your words, but your silence is what crushed them. By this stage, the instructors were desperate. Every mental pathway had failed. Every emotional test had collapsed. Every attempt to copy your instincts had sent agents running. So they pivoted yet again, clinging to the last illusion they still believed in: communication. If they couldn't match your mind, maybe they could imitate your mouth. Imagine a room full of agents watching recordings of you, not for what you said, but for how you said it. They dissected your timing, your pauses, the way your voice drops right before you reveal a truth. the way your silence feels louder than their shouting. They analyzed your micro-expressions, frame by frame, trying to catalog each one like ingredients in a recipe. They studied your smirk. They studied the tension in your eyes. They studied the tilt of your head that silently whispers, "Don't insult me, I already know." But this is where the meltdown truly began. Because the more they studied your communication, the more they realized it isn't communication, it's control. It's battlefield energy disguised as calm conversation. Your voice isn't soft because you're gentle. It's soft because you don't need to raise it. Your silence doesn't create distance, it creates gravity. Your pauses aren't nerves, they're pressure points. They tried to turn your instincts into scripts, but scripts can't replace scars. Imagine this. They teach Agent 26 the timing of your stare. He tries it in a simulation. Instead of commanding the room, he just looks like a confused intern trying to remember his lines, because your gaze works for one reason only. You see people before they see themselves. Agents couldn't fake that. They couldn't fake your read of the room. They couldn't fake the weight behind your pauses. They couldn't fake the message in your stillness. One agent finally said what they all felt. I can copy their expression, but not the reason behind it. Your communication isn't a technique. It's a survival language forged from years of reading danger in people's voices, motives in their silence, and truth in their contradictions. And that's when the instructors finally accepted the truth. They weren't teaching communication. They were trying to teach intuition sharpened by war. And no classroom in the world could recreate that. Number 8. When their perfect copy got exposed in under 10 seconds. They recreated your face, your tone, your posture, but authenticity is the one thing clones never survive. Agent 56 was their golden trophy, their pride, their proof that maybe someone could finally imitate you without collapsing. She studied every clip, every gesture, every shift in your voice. She trained until she could mimic you so perfectly on camera that even the instructors felt a chill. They thought they had finally cracked the code. They thought they had built the first living replica of your presence. Then they sent her into the field, and reality dismantled their fantasy in less than a breath. Imagine this. She walks into the room with your posture, your stillness, your silence. She delivers your timing, your gaze, your quiet authority. It was a flawless performance, at least on the surface, but the target didn't freeze. He didn't fear her. He didn't fold the way people fold around you. He just laughed, and not a polite laugh, a laugh that slices straight through the illusion. He looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're performing power. Real danger doesn't perform. It breathes." That line shattered her, because in that moment she realized what every agent refused to admit. You don't act powerful. You don't pretend to be in control. You don't simulate calm. Your energy isn't a mask. It's a biography. It's truth. It's history, it's instinct carved into your bones by the universe itself. She tried to wear your presence like a costume, but presence isn't fabric. Presence is weight, pressure, depth. She had the outline, but not the essence. She had the technique, but not the backbone. She had the gestures, but none of the lived reality behind them. Imagine this. She walks back into headquarters pale, shaking, realizing she had been applauded for copying something she never actually understood. It hit her all at once. Your authenticity wasn't learned. It wasn't practiced. It wasn't created in any training room. It was born from surviving things these agents couldn't even imagine. Within days, she resigned. She called the entire program a factory of ghosts pretending to be alive, because that's exactly what it was. A warehouse of people imitating the surface of a mind that only exists because its owner survived the darkness underneath. And that's why she failed, not because she wasn't skilled, but because you cannot clone a soul forged in storms they've never walked through. Number 9. When they finally admitted you weren't a person, you were a phenomenon. They didn't conclude you were rare. They concluded you were unreproducible. You weren't a prototype. You were a once-in-existence mutation shaped by war they never saw. By week 7, all the arrogance that built this program had evaporated. The pride, the certainty, the smug belief that humans could be engineered into your likeness, gone. What replaced it was something they never expected to feel towards someone they once treated like a case study. Awe. They finally understood the truth that every enemy in your life eventually learns the hard way. You weren't a model or a checklist or a mental technique. You were an event, a turning point, a one-time collision between pain, intuition, resilience, and clarity that created something no lab could reconstruct. Imagine this: neuroscientists flipping through charts with shaking hands, geneticists staring at contradictory data that should not coexist, philosophers whispering, "This isn't evolution, this is emergence." They had spent 7 weeks trying to decode you, and by the end, they realized they weren't analyzing a skill set. They were documenting what happens when a human survives so many internal battles that they exit the other side as something the system has no name for. You're not the result of training, you're the result of surviving what training could never simulate. In the final review, every expert, regardless of field, arrived at the same conclusion. Your traits are not transferable, teachable, or replicable. Your intuition wasn't taught, it was carved. Your awareness wasn't trained, it was forced. Your resilience wasn't developed, it was demanded by circumstances brutal enough to crush anyone else. Imagine a long conference table where specialists finally say out loud what they've been scared to admit. If anyone else experienced what shaped them, they would break. They did not break. If we push subjects to copy this mind, we harm them. This transformation is not a method, it's an anomaly. The unavoidable truth settled over the room like a final verdict. You aren't a blueprint. You aren't a model. You aren't a system anyone can download or survive. You are the anomaly, the one outcome the universe allows only once, and every attempt to recreate you doesn't build another version. It destroys the subjects who try, and chosen one, now you see why they trained 100 agents and still walked away empty-handed. You weren't just the test, you were the limit they couldn't cross, the anomaly they couldn't dissect, the one mind they could study forever and still never reach. If this message hit you, press the like button if you haven't already, and if you're not part of this family yet, make sure to subscribe. Stay close. The next chapter goes even deeper, because your story isn't done. The world hasn't seen anything yet.